Um, okay. First of all, we just celebrate Bitcoin's 10th anniversary, noting how it evolved from an anonymous coin to a financial revolution, which attracted a variety of people and created a thriving community of believers. I'm one of the people who truly believes in Bitcoin, and it's very important after the final speech. Here in Israel, we have a great example of those dedicated believers. We have a Bitcoin embassy here in Tel Aviv, as well as the Israeli Bitcoin Association. Both operate from 2013 till this day, no matter the highs and lows of Bitcoin's value. Yes, they do deserve that. We just had a very impressive Bitcoin's anniversary party that gathered more than 1,000 people from all over the country to celebrate this occasion. One of the main contributors to this event and a very good party is chairman of the Israeli Bitcoin Association. From the first day back in 2013 till this day, please welcome Mr. Meli Rosenfeld. Also, we have here in this panel is a well-known Bitcoin activist, a researcher and a developer, as well as a very efficient troll on Twitter, Mr. Udi Wertheimer. And last but not least, we have the Israeli cyber law attorney, blogger, and a known advocate for Bitcoin as a currency, Jonathan Klinger. So I have those questions here, but I'm going to put them aside after the last speech, because I think we deserve to be heard and to answer some of these really weird accusations against Bitcoin. And we have some pretty specialists here to answer those things. I like to say that his comment about women in Bitcoin is not really accurate. There are women in Bitcoin and in the technological world as much as any other industry. There is a whole concept and questions around it, but it's not really something to comment specifically regarding Bitcoin and this conference. Just a note. But I would like to give some time to answer this, the electricity usage for Bitcoin. What else was there? Okay, so I'm going to start with Manny. Manny, if you can just give us some, and I will let the others as well, but if you can give us some answers to those accusations.
Yeah, okay, so I of course very much respect Professor Avi Simchon. Unfortunately, I disagree with pretty much everything that he said, and it starts with the issue that he mentioned. Thank you. Yeah, it starts with the issue that he said that Bitcoin is inefficient because there is a cost to creating it, which is absolute nonsense, because money should have a cost to creating it. If you have a form of money that can be printed for free without any cost, then it's fundamentally worthless. Now,
he said it's for good things. We can print money. For good.
Yeah, but I mean, if you take, for example, a currency like shekels, it's not in practice worthless, but the main reason it's not worthless is due to coercion. There are some laws in Israel that pretty much force you to use shekels, and that's the reason shekels have value. On the other hand, Bitcoin has value because people choose to use it. They're not coerced into using it. And for that to be meaningful, there needs to be a cost to creating it because, like I said, for it to be something that is considered valuable, it cannot be just printed out of thin air, and that's, that's something that is famously happened to the US dollars ever since the Nixon shock in 1971. where the US dollar was no longer backed by physical gold, which of course cannot be created out of nothing. The value of the US dollar plummeted, and that's not a very good way to have a currency that actually can be used as a store of value and as a media to, to get your salary today and use it sometime in the future. You want a currency that does not drop in value so much, and for that there needs to be some scarcity, there needs to be some cost in creating it. Now, the actual efficiency is not measured in how much it costs to create the money, it's measured in how much it costs to move the money. And efficient money is one which you can easily move, and of course in this area Bitcoin excels much more than traditional currencies. Of course, if I have money in a bank, it could take me tens of dollars just to transfer it to another bank account over the world, and it will take several days and so on. So of course the Bitcoin is much more efficient, both Bitcoin itself, and also I'm not sure how many people here have heard about the Lightning Network. That's a second layer solution that makes Bitcoin payments much faster and much cheaper. And I'm very happy that both Tal and Elon mentioned the very awesome party that we had on Thursday. And one of the main themes of the party was the Lightning Network, because it's progressing very nicely. And we thought that we are not celebrating only 10 years for Bitcoin, but also the success of the Lightning Network. So that's the true efficiency. And of course, Bitcoin excels in that. Now, he also mentioned anonymity. So that's a common misconception. Bitcoin is not anonymous. In fact, it's much more public, there's much more public information than in other currencies. Now, there are other digital currencies that are much more anonymous than Bitcoin, but the main thing is Bitcoin itself, which is pseudonymous, it's not anonymous. Every transaction in Bitcoin is publicly recorded, so that's something that people should know. And this, if we want to stop money laundering and illegal activity and so on, we can make use of that information. And
let's talk about the criminal aspect of Bitcoin that he kept mentioning about terrorism and...
Okay, so yeah, I think maybe Klinger would be best suited to answer about that, but there was one more thing I wanted to say, which I don't remember, but...
the electricity used.
So that's...
The power used to create Bitcoin. It's not efficient.
I talked about that, but no, with electricity, the actual issue is not the creation. The creation should have a cost. There is electricity cost for the ongoing... the mining, which basically is what maintains the network. So there is a cost to that. I think maybe Udi would be best suited to answer that, and I forgot already what I wanted to say, so I guess I'll pass on the mic to Udi.
Okay, so actually I completely agree with Professor Simchon, so I have nothing to say. No, I'm kidding. So first of all, I think that making the comparison between fiat money like the shekels to Bitcoin is just not a good comparison to make. Bitcoins aren't printed in the same way that fiat money is printed. Fiat money, Bitcoin can guarantee to you that there are not going to be any more than 21 million Bitcoins created ever, and no government can ever guarantee the same thing for their own currency. So no matter what happens, no matter what the politicians want to promise, they cannot promise that they won't print more shekels, even if they wanted to, and they don't want to, but even if they wanted to, they couldn't promise that. So that's the big difference with Bitcoin, and the comparison just doesn't make sense. With regards to electrical use, so I actually agree with many. It's pretty much, the cost of producing a Bitcoin isn't a waste. It goes into the value of Bitcoin, and it's only possible because someone's willing to buy it at the price that would make it worthwhile to mine it. So it's not a waste. It's kind of contributing into the value of Bitcoin.
I'd like to address the first issue of printing money. So Professor Simchon mistakenly said that it's almost nothing to print money. Well, that's not the case. Even if you read the digital shekel report, it said that the costs are in the tens of millions of shekels per year. But that's not the thing. The thing is that there's a secondary cost in printing cash. Once you have a cash-based society, or you have cash, you have money laundering, and you have tax evasion. So the cost of not going to Bitcoin and having a full system that enables transparency to the government and reporting on every transaction means that we have a lot of tax evasion and a lot of money laundering, meaning that the cost of printing money is the cost of the whole black market in the Israeli economy, which is estimated at 13% of the economy or something like that. So saying that Bitcoin is expensive in comparison to having no tax evasion is something that's, let's say, said only if you don't understand the technology behind Bitcoin. Now, if you want to understand the revolution that Bitcoin brought, and you have to look at it through regulation, and we'll talk more about it later, but you have to understand that Bitcoin came to Israel, and Israel accepted it and made a greenhouse here. We're trying to grow Bitcoin here with new technologies. The tax authority, in spite of their saying that Bitcoin should be taxed under capital gains, acknowledges the great potential of Bitcoin technologies and allows tax incentives for investors in Bitcoin technology, not speculative investors in the currency itself. The law community, the Knesset acknowledges Bitcoin as a financial asset and allows, under the new regulation, to have a financial institution. Now, we do have here great opportunities, and saying, well, Bitcoin should be gone, well, maybe Bitcoin as a specific coin could be gone later on, or could be devalued or debased, but, well, the concept of one decentralized community that has one coin is inevitable. There's no way that I, as a citizen of the world, should have to pay exchange rates when I go abroad. I don't have to pay a lot of institutions when I want to purchase, let's say, a burger in the US. I don't have to pay for conversion costs. My money is the same wherever I go. And when you acknowledge that and you see that trade should have no barriers, then you know that we'll go and have one decentralized coin no matter what.
Okay, there was one more thing I wanted to add. Professor Simchon and later Jonathan mentioned government-issued digital currencies. So that's a concept that for me is kind of a non-starter for a very simple reason. The government currencies are already mostly digital. The shekel that we know, most shekels are not the notes that are the physical notes. Most shekels are lines in the bank servers. So shekels are already digital. And even though the new category of coins like Bitcoin, we call it digital currencies, and it's an okay name, but it's not very accurate. What makes Bitcoin different from shekels is that Bitcoin is decentralized. And I think Professor Simchon did not once in his talk mention the word decentralized, which makes me believe he does not really understand Bitcoin very well. So yes, so what's different from Bitcoin and shekels is that Bitcoin is decentralized, whereas any digital shekel that people might create is not decentralized by definition. So I don't see how that could help anything.
It could be an asset on any smart contract blockchain. Well, state-backed notes that say whenever you come to us, we'll replace this funny asset with real Bitcoins. But yeah, that would take time.
Okay, so the main thing we can see here is we can say all four of us are very protective of Bitcoin. We are, some may say maximalists. I know you don't like this word, but you have to go with it right now. The maximalist, the term, it means that Bitcoin core believers or activists or users that we're considered a very protective and guarded community, okay? So I would like to ask something about that and the whole concept of community. And as you know, Bitcoin is not just code, it's the communities around it, and also it's a belief in this coin, okay? And the image of Bitcoin and what the core, the hardcore Bitcoin community sometimes is looked upon as very guarded and unapproachable, and maybe even sometimes fanatic, okay? As you could see, even now we jumped and we had to say our mind, we had to speak our minds regarding, even after Professor Simchon's speech, we had to protect the coin we believe in. And I would like to ask you, and maybe I'll ask you, Udi, as at least for this panel, you're the representative of maximalists, or you can correct me if you like. I would like to hear from you, your side of the thing. If you think there's things you need to improve, you think this concept is misguided, talk.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this term of Bitcoin maximalists. It's a term that people in the cryptocurrency community sometimes use to refer to people who seem to appreciate other non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies less than they do appreciate Bitcoin, I guess. And I personally don't like this term so much because I think it does some injustice to what I think some people believe. It's not that people believe in Bitcoin or think that Bitcoin is this religious thing and it's better than anything else. I think it's a special asset that has special properties that nothing else has, not in the traditional world and not even in assets that came after it. And I think that this is a very unique thing. I'm very hopeful that maybe we'll be able to have more assets like that, but I believe that so far we do not. So that's personally the way I view it. Anyways, people who have been Bitcoiners or Bitcoin users or Bitcoin holders or so on for a while, they usually, I mean, they got to see a lot of scams and a lot of people trying to, to take their money with various overzealous promises of future riches. And Bitcoiners are used to that because it's digital money and because it's easy to send it and you can't take your money back after you sent it, then a lot of people use that to try and do various hoaxes. So I think that Bitcoiners over the time became protective and very suspicious of anyone promising them anything. So, and it's true for the social part, so it's true for the community part, it's also true in the technological part because technologists and developers in the Bitcoin world are always very pessimistic. They're always looking for the worst things and the worst kind of attacks that Bitcoin might be attacked with, and they're trying to protect against it. And it's the same in the community side. So community members in Bitcoin are always kind of looking at the worst things that could happen and trying to protect from that. And there are good parts about it and bad parts about it, but I think the positive side of this is that Bitcoiners seem to survive, They seem to stick along whenever, even, when you have downturns like we have today, and even when I think in 2017 there were a lot of hoaxes around and a lot of people lost their money because they invested in pretty crazy stuff. So I think a lot of Bitcoiners kind of survived that because they have this protectiveness. On the other side, it might look like a difficult group to get into from the outside. I say, give it a shot because Bitcoiners are very friendly. Whenever I reach out to, someone who's a Bitcoin user who I don't personally know and I reach out to them, I usually find someone who's very friendly and very eager to talk and very eager to help. So it's a very great community once you take the first step. So I recommend everyone who's maybe not sure and curious to just reach out. Of course, reach out to me and just reach out to everyone you see. This is one of the greatest community, and we saw this in the party too. But yeah, I think we should, looking forward, we should think about how we can be more open while still trying to be more approachable, while still trying to be as protective as we were, because this is important too for long-term survival, I believe.
Manny, do you have anything to say about that? Maybe about the, Udi did speak about the technological side of this, the technical side, sorry.
Okay, now what I have to say is that I think Tal mixed two separate issues in the question. So there is protectiveness of Bitcoin versus traditional currencies. There is protectiveness of Bitcoin versus what is called ALTs, alternative digital currencies, which are like Bitcoin in some sense, but not Bitcoin. So these are two separate issues. So for the first one, I think it should be expected that I don't know if the word protective is what I'd use, but we like Bitcoin. If I wouldn't like Bitcoin, I'm probably in the wrong conference. But yeah, for the other issue of maximalism and Bitcoin versus alts, I think, it's a very difficult topic to unpack, but it all boils down to decentralization, which I mentioned earlier. So Bitcoin has very high standards for what it means to be decentralized, both in how it was issued and how it's developed and how the network works and so on. So I don't mind any other alt that lives up to the same standards, but most of the currencies that are considered to be in the category of digital currencies do not have the same standard of decentralization. And, actually, so now we are after 10 years of Bitcoin's existence, and Bitcoin started with what is called the Genesis block, the first block in the Bitcoin blockchain, and there was actually a hash of a headline from a newspaper from that date, January 3rd, 2009. A headline from the Times London was hashed into the block, and that's how we know that there was no pre-mining, right? We know that Satoshi did not, before that date, mine some coins to himself before he let everyone know about Bitcoin, and that's part of the decentralization standard, because a lot of other coins either openly or covertly pre-mine, because the developer of the coin wants to get more for himself, so he mines some coins in one way or another before he puts the word out of the coin, and that's, of course, much less decentralized. Bitcoin does have a high standard, and the issuing was done over a long period of time where everyone had an equal right. So that's something you do not see in most of the other digital currencies. So that's one of the main reasons a lot of people don't like them that much.
I think that if you apply the rules of the Bitcoin community into the Bitcoin code and into the Bitcoin blockchain, you see that they're very similar. First, you have full transparency, meaning you do have a transparent source code, you do have a transparent blockchain, and you do have a transparent community, meaning each and every person shows their personal interests. Now, if either one doesn't have that transparency, he's frowned upon. If you have a technology that isn't transparent, then, well, it could be a scam, it could not be a scam, but will doubt you. If you have a coin that's anonymous, meaning it doesn't have a verifiable blockchain, we'll need to verify, we'll need to check it. And the same if you don't show your interests. If you share, for example, a referral fee in one of our forums, it's frowned upon. After that, we go to the issue of integrity and trust, meaning it's not just that you have to be transparent, it means that you have to show that whatever you're developing, it has to be later on verifiable and succeeding. If you see projects that were created under these values, you can see a lot of open source projects that became financial successes, not investing in currencies, investing in projects. Now, these same values, anyone who wants to join can join. You don't have to hold a Bitcoin or a fraction of the Bitcoin to be a part of the Bitcoin community. I don't know how many people are Bitcoin developers, but a lot of them don't hold any cryptocurrencies. They're just a part of the community, and they can read code and tell you, well, guys, this has a bug like Udi does. Or they can say, well, I read the white paper and it seems like a scam, well, something that I do a bit more. Or they can just say, well, they're not transparent enough. So the laws of these communities are something that should be applied externally, and that's being a maximalist, going and saying these rules should be applied to all aspects of life, not just the Bitcoin community. If you want to do business with me, be transparent. If you want to go and have me as a partner in a project, be transparent with me, be trustworthy. Let me know that whatever I do is verifiable later. I don't have to trust you, I have to trust the code. But if you fail me, I'll put you out and tell everyone you're a scammer.
Isn't it putting such a high standard for everyone? Isn't it too
people's
high?
money. Do you want your banker being someone that, let's say, was involved in a scam 5 or 10 years ago? Do you want your prime minister to be someone who's suspected?
You do know what's going on, right?
in getting bribed? No, you want the people in charge to be of high standards. You want the people who write code for your banking application and your financial application to be of the highest integrity. People who were not caught or did not have the benefit of the doubt of getting acquittal. You want these people to be the most trustworthy people you can find.
Okay, so let's talk about another, let's say, challenges Bitcoin is facing. And one big challenge, I think it's maybe one of the biggest or the hardest challenge, is basically government and regulation. Jonathan, what do you think, as a known advocate for Bitcoin as a currency, what do you think is lacking in regulation in order for cryptocurrency to be accepted as an official currency today?
So under Israeli law, if any other state declares Bitcoin as legal tender, then we're good. We can act as if it was a real currency for any other reason. If this doesn't happen, and this most likely won't happen, we need to fix the laws in order to accept it as a currency, or otherwise it would be treated as an asset, meaning both capital gains tax, but also all the other qualities of an asset legal-wise, which means you can treat it, you can trade with it, but you need to pay different taxes. Now, the taxation issue is both the technical and the material issue. It's technical because it needs reporting, and reporting on every transaction's financial gain means that if you want to go and buy pizza and you have to report the amount you spent on buying the Bitcoin that you paid for the pizza with, it means that you have to do a lot of calculations. And this means that there's no use for the Lightning Network in Israel if you need to have this amount of reporting. Now, on the other hand, it's not just these technicalities. It means that in order to buy the pizza, you need to make a profit, because otherwise, if you're losing money, then it's a problem. Now, this might be stabilized later on when Bitcoin won't fluctuate that much and will not be as volatile. But currently, taxation is one regulation problem, and the other is that outside of Israel or inside of Israel, banks treat Bitcoin and cryptocurrency traders like they're money launderers. Now, these guys come to the banks and tell them, I can show you my public ledger, I can show you all my transactions, and banks come and say, well, still, it's from Bitcoin, it might be suspected of money laundering. Now, the regulation that we lack is some regulator going down to these banks, telling them, well, guys, stop this. If you have a specific concern on money laundering issues, please let this guy know and report him to the police. If not, please accept his funds. Now, these are the challenges that we need to fix in regulation after the upcoming elections. Now, Israel is currently in a freeze because of these elections, so the regulation that was supposed to come in effect to prevent money laundering is frozen because it was sent to the committee in Parliament but not approved yet, and many is working on it, as well as other people, but until this is fixed, we might have more problems with banks and transactions.
Yeah, there are a lot of things I could say about that. Like Jonathan mentioned, the Israeli Bitcoin Association is doing a lot of work with regulators, but I want to address one specific thing which Jonathan mentioned and which might be of some interest here. It also connects to some of the things I said earlier about the issue of legal tender. So a foreign currency in Israeli law is defined as a legal tender of some other country. So there is this approach that once Bitcoin is legal tender somewhere, it will be a currency here. But I don't think that will happen. And I think people get confused because some people think that if something is not legal tender, then it's illegal to use it. Right? I mean, it's in the name legal, but that's not what legal tender means. So, what legal tender does mean, and Jonathan will correct me if I'm wrong, it's a thing that you must accept as a settlement of debt. So if we are in Israel and I loaned someone $1,000, and now he goes to give me back the loan, but he doesn't come with dollars, he comes with shekels. I cannot tell him, I will not accept it, I want you to bring me dollar. Because shekels is the legal tender of Israel, so I must accept the payment of the debt in shekels. So that's more or less what legal tender means. And I don't expect that Bitcoin will ever be legal tender anywhere, for the simple reason that legal tender is a concept of coercion. You have to accept it. And I don't think it's appropriate for usage of Bitcoin to be coerced. People should choose to use Bitcoin. So there is some dissonance between the coercion of legal tender and the open source nature of Bitcoin.
I have one final question. I'll start with you, Udi, and if we have time, I would love to hear from you as all. How would you make Bitcoin more approachable? And we should take note, Bitcoin doesn't have a marketing department. It's all us volunteering or either believing, so.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that, I'm a developer, so I'm thinking about the technical sides of things, and I think that a lot of Bitcoin's benefits are currently not always clear to people because they're difficult to use in the best way that you can. So for example, Bitcoin is transparent, which is a good thing, but sometimes it's too transparent. So sometimes I'm sending money to a friend and the friend can learn about my past transactions, and that's maybe too transparent, right? I send rent to my landlord and he can learn what my last paycheck was, so that's too transparent. And there are ways in Bitcoin to make it better today, but it's kind of difficult to use. So I think that, and we see that, I think, in the last year, that there are a lot of attempts to make these abilities and capabilities of Bitcoin a bit more friendly, and we're still starting, but I think there's already an improvement, and I hope it accelerates. And another is the Lightning Network that Benny mentioned before, which is, I think, one of the major advancements in Bitcoin. It will help this issue of not having too much transparency, and it will also make things easier and more, simple. Once Lightning Network matures, and we already see that it does, it's going to be a lot easier for people to make payments in Lightning. And by the way, if some of you already have some Bitcoins or tried using some Bitcoins but never tried Lightning, I encourage you to try it today. With small amounts, right? Don't risk too much. It's still early software, but try it today with the small amounts. It's really something else. It works really well when it works.
Manny, do you have anything to add about Bitcoin being approachable?
Well, okay, I think Bitcoin and the mainstream audience need to meet somewhere in the middle. I mean, Bitcoin does need to improve, the interfaces need to improve. We need to find better ways to explain it, we need to find better ways to use it. So that will happen and should happen, but there's also another thing, that the technical proficiency of people should improve over time. I mean, people right now know how to do things they did not know how to do 100 years ago or 10 years ago. And we have kids that from age 0 play with their smartphones and whatever, and that's not something people 20 years ago imagined. And I think in a similar way, when the more we move forward in time, in a few decades, even the way Bitcoin works now will not seem so complicated for people because they will be used to it, and their parents will teach it. I mean, right now, when someone wants to use Bitcoin, he needs to learn how to use it from someone else. But there will be a time in a few decades where people are born and their parents teach them how to use Bitcoin like they teach them anything else, and it's not going to be as much of a problem as it is now. And that's something that must happen, because even if you drop Bitcoin and, we stay with, traditional currencies and banking and so on, people will need to have some technical proficiency, because even with the old systems, they are not safe if they do not know how to protect themselves, because, we have, increasing problems of identity theft and forgery and so on, and we have these days software that uses machine learning to take, for example, take my photos and try to fabricate a video where I say things which I did not say, and in this scenario it will be easy, for, to go to the bank in my stead and try to approve a transfer that I did not approve, and that's going to be a problem, and there are solutions for such problems, but people will need to have more technical proficiency over time, more aware for how to protect their privacy and their private information, and that's something that should happen with or without Bitcoin, and I think it will happen with Bitcoin.
So basically, we need more time.
Definitely.
Okay.
I think that if you grow Bitcoin too fast, too much, you'll see crashes like you saw both in 2013 during the end and last year and the end of 2017. You don't want a lot of people coming straight in, because then people invest money that they don't have in a method they don't know. You need to increase their proficiency, but still have impediments on going into the market. And if you don't do this slowly and make it approachable during a term of 10, 15, 20 years, then you'll see bubbles and crashes, and we don't want to see that. We don't want to see Bitcoin jumping up 100% over a day. We want to see something that creates an ecosystem, a community. The value of Bitcoin by itself is not a cause. I know that there are a lot of people who come for the money, but they're not the real people who should be a part of the community. If you're here just to make a quick buck, then you can go and invest in a lot of other things and lose your money at the same method. If you're here and you want to learn about a new technology that changes the world each day, then invest and do it slowly. Invest time, not money. Create new technologies, accept payments in Bitcoin, and in 5-10 years, this community will grow itself. I don't know how much Bitcoin will be worth. I can't tell how much it will be worth. But the value of your projects, that's what's important here, guys. Don't forget that.
Well, we urge you to learn about it. Don't just rely on other people's opinions, not the government's representative, and not just us. Learn about it, learn the evolution and revolution it creates, and make your own mind. And seriously, Bitcoin is a state of mind, so do your research. So I want to thank you all. It was really enlightening.
Thank you, Tal.